I will call to order the November the 15th, 2010 regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. I would call at everybody to stand for the presentation of colors by the Air Force Junior ROTC from Central Cabarrus High School.
Left, haste, present, color. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Over, color. Host. Host the color. Right, hey, forward, heart.
If everybody will remain standing for Pastor Neil Haynes to give the invocation from Cold Springs United Methodist Church. Yes, sir.
Let us pray. Holy God, hear us as we come to you in prayer. We thank you for this wonderful nation that you have given to us, and we are reminded that our freedom is not free, but is very costly. We ask your blessings upon our elected officials. Endow them with the wisdom and understanding and judgment that they need as they make the decisions that lie before them this day. For our prayer is for the good of our nation and our county and our state. Hear us, O God. Amen.
Amen. Everybody can be seated. This time I will call on the young men from Central Cabarrus High School and come up, introduce yourselves. And I told you earlier to go to your left, my right. Let's flip it around. Mr. Commissioner Kruth is over here. So if you'll come up one at a time, introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then go over to Commissioner Kruth. He has something for you.
I'm Cadet Technical Sergeant Jesse LaPrade. I'm a junior at Central Cabarrus High School, and I'm a Bravo Flight Assistant Flight Commander within our flight.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I'm Cadet Major Cole Gardet. I'm Vice Group Commander of NC-051, and I appreciate you having us here today.
Thanks, sir.
I am Assistant Color Guard Commander, Cadet Staff Sergeant Ryan Ellis. I am in charge of First Element for B Flight.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Board. My name is Jesse Garza, and I'm a sophomore, and I'm the Color Guard Commander. Thank you.
Thank you. One thing that a lot of people don't know is that these young people spent Thursday at the Boys and Girls Club, if I remember correctly, posting the colors there, and they did a fantastic job. And they do more than just come in here to Cabarrus County, or to the meeting here, as well as other functions. So thank you all for y'all's service, not only to your school, but also to the county. Thank you very much. We have before us the agenda, and there is some addition as well as some removals. I'd call everybody's attention to C2, recognition of Mr. Stephen Langer as the recipient of a 2010 Vance Key Award, removal of business, the resolution, G2, resolution approving in principle a special purpose project for Carolina USA Partners and the financing thereof with recovery zone facility bonds, and also removing the closed session item for tonight. And we have some supplemental information that was already presented. In regards to the additions and the removals, as well as the additions and removals, do we have a motion to approve the agenda with those corrections?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next matter that we have is the minutes, which is found on page 4. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as previously presented?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The next matter is C1, is the page 37. This is Cabarrus County Soil and Water Conservation District, recognition of Commissioner Minot as well as Mr. Bob Ritchie. Page 37 of our agenda. Commissioner Minot, I believe they need you down front.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Bob Ritchie, and I have the honor of serving as the chairman of the Cabarrus Soil and Water Conservation District, and I appreciate you guys affording me a little bit of time for what I consider to be a very important presentation this evening. In 2006, the operational agreement between Cabarrus County, Cabarrus Soil and Water Conservation District, the Division of Soil and Water Conservation, and the NC Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service was revised when the district status changed from a county department to a division within the Commerce Department. Over the past 4 years, we have steadily worked to forge stronger relationships with the county in general and the Board of Commissioners in particular. In 2008, Grace Minot was appointed to the board by the Board of Commissioners to serve as liaison to the district board. Our staff has had the pleasure of working with Grace and her consultants on community conservation design aspects in her Burnt Mill subdivision that is being planned for a portion of the property where she lives. And we also hope to have the opportunity to assist with establishing a meadow of native grasses and wildflowers as part of this planned residential development. Grace was also instrumental this year in securing adequate budget funds for our district to maintain basic conservation services to the citizens of Cabarrus County during the tough economic times that we are in. Grace has been a working liaison. Not only has she attended more district meetings than most of her predecessors, she has served as judge for our annual public speaking contest and accompanied us this year on annual spot checks of conservation practices that were installed under cost share contracts with the district. In recognition of Grace's significant contributions to the Cabarrus Soil and Water Conservation District, it is my honor and pleasure to present her with this plaque on behalf of the board and staff of the Conservation District. And if I may read, in appreciation for public service through the conservation of natural resources, this plaque is presented to Grace Minot, Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners Liaison to the Cabarrus Soil and Water Conservation District, 2008-2010.
My last opportunity to speak in front of folks like this, but I didn't have any idea what the Soil and Water Board was when you assigned me to that position, but I have learned that while it's a very small staff, it's a very dedicated board, and conservation is one of my heartfelt interests, and we need these folks in this community, in this county, as we grow so that we can maintain it the way it is today, the way we love it now. Thank you.
Now I call on Mr. Jeff Goforth to come forward for a presentation to Mr. Bob Ritchie.
And in place of Mr. Jeff Goforth, our vice chairman, who couldn't be here, Dennis Testerman with the Conservation District staff, ask Mr. Richard to come back front center, please. So we have a similar plaque for Bob that I will not read, since you just heard that. Bob has served 2 terms. He was elected in the general election 2002, and for reasons that nobody's quite clear on yet, he's chosen to step down. He's going out at the height of his achievement, I believe. He's been serving as his chair for the past year, served as vice chair for 3 years before that. Bob's not only served at the local level, but like a number of our board members, has served at the state level. Bob has been chairing the Community Conservation Committee, which is one of the standing committees of the State Association of Conservation Districts, and also the Working Land Subcommittee of that committee. And under those 2 committees, the General Assembly established a cost share program for community conservation. The county's benefited from some of those pet waste receptacles in the parks and a cistern at the arena. And under the Working Land Subcommittee, it's ramped up the ability of conservation districts across the state to hold conservation easements. And so Cabarrus has picked up 1 easement since that initiative was put in place. So make quite a lasting commitment to the community. In light of those accomplishments, we have nominated Bob to be Supervisor of the Year for the State Association, and if he's selected, that will be announced at the state meeting in January, and we should be hearing that word probably next month, and we're very hopeful on that. So, Bob, for all your contributions to the county and to the district, we are deeply grateful.
Thank you, Dave.
I'd like to thank the Board of Commissioners as well. It's been kind of my goal over the last 8 years to improve the relationship between the District Board and the County Commissioners Board. And I think we've made great strides in that direction. I, again, really appreciate Grace's input and assistance with the district, and hopefully this is something that will continue to grow and evolve, and we can help all the citizens of Cabarrus County.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next matter we have is another recognition and presentation, and this is on page 39. I would ask for Mr. Bobby Smith to come up along with Mr. Stephen Langer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity tonight to come here and recognize our Fire Marshal, Mr. Stephen Langer, who was nominated by his peers throughout the state for outstanding achievement in the field of emergency management. Steve was nominated for the Vance E. Key Award by the North Carolina Emergency Management Association. This award is given to an assistant EM staff person who has, again, shown extraordinarily dedication to the field of emergency management. Steve had support letters from local, state, and federal partners, and the common theme was his dedication, his attention to detail, and his willingness to do whatever it takes to get the job done. So it is my pleasure tonight, on behalf of the North Carolina Emergency Management Association, to present the 2010 Vance E. Key Award to our Cabarrus County Fire Marshal, Mr. Stephen M. Langer. And for Steve to get this award and recognized statewide this early in his career, I think is a testimony to his dedication. And I have a feeling this is the first of many awards we'll be presenting this young man during his career here. So Steve, congratulations, and it's an honor.
Again, I would give thanks to Bobby for his leadership and dedication, and also the support of county management during the time that Bobby was out, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. Next matter we have is the informal public comments, and there is one that I will call on, but I don't think that, Mr. Klein, you do not choose to speak at this point in time.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make certain. The next is Mr. Marvin Bost. Mr. Bost.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, commissioners. Marvin Boss, 3150 Mount Pleasant Road, Concord. I'm here tonight to talk about the county fair. The history and tradition of our county fair reaches well beyond the county and region. Many around the state have found themselves in fierce competition with the state awards in our fair book, agriculture, youth, and many more, to just say a few. We're known for our creativity and our innovation programs, and we are the envy and have been copied many, many times around this state. In our last fair at the old fairgrounds, there were attended by 50,000 people. And I asked one question I have tonight: why haven't we hit the 100,000 mark at our new fairgrounds? This year, Cleveland County was one as just close to our county fair, had 167,000 people that went through the gate. It's more than 17,000 increase from the year before. In 2009, another fair that's run by a governmental is the Dixie Classic Fair in Winston-Salem. They had 353,000 people to go through the gates. We have a facility that's second to none and known in knowledge that is worth everything that we have put into it. We need more events to bring more people to get and stay longer at our fair. We're turning into a glorified carnival at our fair. North Carolina, in the last 5 years, conducted a survey, and the fair patrons, what they wanted to see, replied animals. They want to see the animals. They're not close to them. This is the only contact a lot of people have, is at our county fair. It is critical not to lose our livestock and agriculture in the Cabarrus County Fair. We need tractor pulls, horse pulls, rodeos. We need to use our arena that we have to get people in there. I'm all for a concert, absolutely. But if we're going to have a concert and we're totally talking local, let's use the Avett Brothers. They can't find any more local than the Avett Brothers. And promote our home people, not going out somewhere and finding somebody else. The cost of the concert can be offset by charging, and I promise you will fill the arena totally with this. Let's also bring local businesses for a luncheon to eat with our vendors at the fair. On our community, on Fridays or Mondays, noon, to get business people out there to spend their money, and they'll bring their families back to enjoy the fair that night. A lot of the fairs across the state do this right now, even our state fair. You also open the gates at 9 o'clock and get more people into the facility to spend more money and need to see. But you need something for them to see. You need activities for them to see, things to bring them in. It's really important that I'm here tonight. When I went to the fair office and offered my help this year to our new staff and gave all the effort we could, we brought 150 full-size chickens. We brought 50 ducks. We brought 20 of our large animals. We also had on display for our patrons to learn about. Also, I presented Kate, our new fair manager, with a bill of just the expenses it costed us to put this on. It occurred during the fair. I was told I couldn't be paid because I was a volunteer. How would you like to absorb what I had to in this? I also have a bill here to pass to each one of you to see. I brought the baby chicks, the duck slides, the mums, the pumpkins. Also traveled 4 times back and forth to Raleigh to bring stalls because we don't own any in this county. Providing these county services to people would be like you asking, well, I'm sorry, I can't pay you because you hadn't paid your taxes. How would you feel? I brought a copy, like I said, for information if you'd like to see this. I understand things change, but we can't change the rules without letting people know up front. And I was never told that I wouldn't be paid for the work I perform. I want to be the best fair that we can be because it has a potential. Our fair, Cabarrus County Fair, has a potential of having over 200,000 people through the gate. I tried this year, and I'm sorry I was treated this way.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Next we have is Mr. Price Crutchfield.
That would be AKA Osama bin Crutchfield.
Mr. Crutchfield, if you'll come over a little bit to the microphone.
Yeah, I'm a terrorist. Anyway, the Concord police put me under arrest about a month ago. It's a series of arrests been made. This is just one of many. And I was charged with calling the Concord police a bunch of child molesters. Now, I want to make this clear. I was charged with calling the Concord police a bunch of child molesters. Now, the day that I called the Concord police a bunch of child molesters, I was in front of a police station. I was outraged because if you're with the Concord police and you get charged with a felony sex crime against a minor, you're allowed to make a plea bargain and not answer for your crime. We've got an elected district attorney here. I think her name's Roxanne. I can never pronounce her name right, Voxamit or whatever it is. She doesn't prosecute the police in Concord when they're charged with felony sex crimes against minors. And I don't understand, because the police told me that the courts are separate from the police. Well, if the courts are separate from the police, why don't they prosecute Concord police when they're charged with felony sex crimes against minors? And that's why it was one of the reasons that I got upset and called members of the Concord Police Department a bunch of child molesters. Well, anyway, the next day they came to my house. I counted 6 cars. My neighbors come outside. What's going on? What's going on? I said, well, I'm getting arrested for calling members of the Concord Police child molesters. And so I had to go to jail and atone for my crime. And they didn't have to atone for theirs. And I don't understand why is it when you're with the Concord Police Department and you're charged with a felony sex crime against a minor that you're only under a $3,000 bond. And that 3 years later you're able to make a plea bargain to a lesser crime of assault on a female and not have to register as a sex offender. When I called the Concord Police a bunch of child molesters, I had to answer for my crime. I mean, they should have to answer for theirs. Something don't add up here. And again, I hate it, but I had to call members of the Concord Police Force a bunch of child molesters. Now, they accused me one time of trying to start a riot. They said I was rude and riotous. Well, if I'm trying to start a riot, obviously I'm a terrorist. I'm trying to instill fear. It's okay for them to charge me with trying to start a riot, which was never true, and I was found not guilty of the whole deal. It's okay for them to call me a terrorist, but I can't call them child molesters when, in fact, they're able to make plea bargains and not answer for sex crimes against minors at our schools. I don't understand that. It just boggles my mind that these professionals, I thought they were professionals, maybe they're not too professional. Somebody needs to go back to school and take classes so that you can have the right decorum around children. I really believe that. I had a conversation with the chief of police and a member of the school board. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Crutchfield. The next is, we have old business under E1, which is the elections discussion selection process for the building contractor. This is page 41. This is a matter that I believe it was presented to us at our work session. Actually, this was tabled some time ago, and the question was contractor CM at Risk as it relates to CM Black Construction Company. Is there any further information from our work session that we need to discuss with Mr. Downs, or any questions for Mr. Downs?
So the pre-construction is going to be 25,500 rather than 49,200, let's see.
That's correct. The original contract, when we were going to the old fairground site, they had calculated it at the 49,000. With the new site, it has been reduced to 25,500, and some of that fee, as well as some of the work that they've already done on evaluating the fairground site and some of the other sites that we were looking at as well.
And we won't know their final fee until we get.
That's correct.
Guaranteed maximum price.
Their Yates Kreitzberg is in the process now of doing the design of the building. And once that, they will come up with a guaranteed maximum price, and then that's when we'll come back to you to approve the guaranteed maximum price, once the design is finished.
Any other questions for Mr. Downs?
I guess the question otherwise, what, do we know what their fee is going to be yet for the overall project? I mean, is that based on the
That's
guaranteed
based on
maximum
the price.
What percentage, if they said percentage yet, or what was
Total it can't exceed 15%, I believe.
And that amount is the same for both contracts.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add one thing to what Mr. Downs has had to say. Since this project ordinarily would be subject to the provisions of Chapter 143 of the North Carolina General Statutes and has changed, yet we're still going to use the same contractor, there's a provision in the statutes under 143-64.32 that allows us, if you wish, to exempt this from Chapter 143, since it is essentially at least partly the same project using the same contractor. Under that statute, you just simply need to reference it and say that you're exempting it from Chapter 143 because you already had a valid existing contract with CM Black for at least part of this project. So if you could include that exemption in any motion to approve the amendment, it will then conform with Chapter 143.
Any other discussion? Do we have a motion to approve the amendment to the contract with CM Black Construction Company for construction manager at risk and an exemption from Chapter 143 of the North Carolina General Statutes?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll make the second. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so it passes 4-1? Okay. My hearing was off. I'm sorry. Just want to make certain what I heard is what I thought I heard. Okay. Under 2 is a resolution pertaining to the future of an animal shelter in Cabarrus County.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is just an update for the board. As I mentioned in our work session, we're moving towards a resolution for this board to consider. And we had our meeting last week. I gave you all a copy of a resolution at our work session. And then we had the meeting last week, and there were some changes that the committee members requested. I would look back at the language of that. That is still being worked on. So I don't have a resolution here tonight. So we'll have to eventually table this to next month to consider the resolution next month. But just quickly give you all an update on what went on at the meeting. We did talk about several topics, and one of those, just run through this real quick, is there, if I can find where my notes are at, I made. 1 second here. That, it's pretty much the consent and the kind of consensus of the group that the best way to proceed, that there's really only one organization in the county that is currently has all the resources or the organizational resources needed to take on running the shelter, and that would be the Humane Society. And there was a general consensus that we should work to strengthen that relationship and in doing so is draw up performance measures and actually work towards a contract with them to basically manage the shelter from all the way from basically the time the animals are brought into the shelter by our animal control officers until they are adopted out or transferred to other rescue groups. And the feeling is if we put the right language in a contract with them, that we would be able to ensure that other rescue groups are included in the program. That would also give us the opportunity to specify levels as far as our goals are concerned, as far as save rates. And so that would be basically the consensus, their consensus to do that. The next steps beyond this are for us to look at, organize ourselves in such a way to put together those criteria. But I think that, once we get the resolution passed, that we'll be able to proceed then with that next step of looking at, what are the things that we want included in that, in the provisions on a contract, and start working towards that ends. And part of that contract deal would be that the monies now that are devoted to running the shelter, that are given to the sheriff now, which is about $115,000, that would be part of that contract deal, and it would be paid to them to operate the facility. But that's kind of where we left it for now until we get the resolution approved. And then there is also there's some talk that once we get this moving forward, we may need to come back and look at the overall committee makeup of including more of the rescue groups and capturing who all the rescue groups are in the county and making sure they're our own a group to provide oversight to this program. And then, so that's kind of where we stand. And I'm not sure if we have one member of our committee that's here in the audience tonight. I'm not sure if she has anything to add to that or, okay, so, but with that, then I would move then, and we should have that, let's say, ready by December, move that we table then the consideration of resolution until our December regular meeting.
Regular meeting?
Regular
So that'd be
meeting.
December the 20th.
The 20th, yeah.
We have a motion to table this item until December the 20th at our regular meeting. We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. One thing is, in regards to the save rates, have y'all discussed how that gets figured? And what I mean by that is it per capita? How do you base it from one year to the next if it's not per capita and you have accurate reflections of the number?
I believe we agreed, and Marcia can confirm or deny, so I think 12, we looked at one at a 12-month rolling average. So it would be.
I understand, but
that would be, it would be a percentage. So it would be the number of animals that are collected versus the number that are adopted or transferred out. So that would always be a percentage. So it would not depend upon the number
Okay.
itself. It would be a percentage-based goal rather than a raw number.
And then in regards to the any additional positions, if it's requested, it's not additional funded positions from the county.
It would be included as part of the contract requirements.
So it's not additional funding from the county?
Right. Yeah. We would use the funding that's currently available. That would not be, I know there's been some pushback from several folks concerning that it would be used, the monies that are now available to the shelter would fund this.
Anything further? We have a
Mr.
motion.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm going to support this motion because looking over the resolution presented to us, it needs to be reworked, and that's the reason I'm going to vote for this motion.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries. This matter is tabled until December the 20th.
Plus, I believe, point of order, I believe that way also Commissioner Privet doesn't have to vote on it next month either.
What was that stated?
I said you don't have to vote on it next month either, though.
That's right.
We have the consent agenda before us, which is F1 through 7. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries. Next matter we have is on page 94 of our agenda, which is the Tondo Road, public right-of-way abandonment, public hearing. Calling Mrs. Morris at this time.
Good evening. This is the first one of these that you all have seen in a while. We talked about it at the work session. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer that. any of those questions. This is to close approximately .028 miles of Atondo Road. That is where the incubator farm is located, and the purpose of the abandonment is so that some security measures can be installed there. And you will need to hold a public hearing.
And .028 miles is 152 feet,
Yes.
roughly.
Yes. So it's at the very end of the road, and it only impacts the county property and then the property that the county leases as a part of the farm as well.
Okay. Any questions for Mrs. Morris? Okay. I will open this up for a public hearing. Does anybody want to speak for or against the closing of Atondo Road, this .028? Seeing nobody coming forward, I'll close the public hearing. Any further discussion from this board? Do we have a motion to adopt the resolution for abandonment of approximately .028 miles of Atondo Road public right-of-way?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next we have is, was pulled off, that was G2, the resolution approving in principle special purpose project for Carolina USA Partners LLC and the financing. Next matter that we have now is G3, which is page 113 of our agenda, which is the Kannapolis Certificates of Participation financing for the North Carolina Research Campus. This was presented to us at our work session. I've asked Mr. Legg to maybe give us a summary overview, and if there's anybody that you need to refer to, just let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. First of all, on behalf of our mayor and city council, thank you for this time. This has been a long time coming, and I think your consideration of this issue is indicative of the commitment I think the commissioners and our city council both have made to support the largest economic development project, one of the 3 largest economic development projects this county's ever seen. So I appreciate the time. As you know, a little background for the record, if nothing else. We were pursuing this as a tax increment financing, one of the first tax increment financing issues in the state of North Carolina, through a period of negotiation. And a failing economy has gotten us 5 years later to this point of having an unsuccessful TIF issuance. We're at the point now that we've developed a plan for certificates of participation, which is what we've been discussing for the past few months, which has some inherent advantages, most notably the lower interest rate. But the disadvantage to the city council to some degree is that they have to commit to this debt in a different way than they would the tax increment financing. But that is a commitment the city council has made, largely because the bond issue amount is different than it was when we first started this discussion. $168 million is a lot different than $36 or $37 million. And there are now leases with the university buildings and the community college building that essentially guarantee about half of the tax payments necessary to service the debt. So that's a little history. Why the urgency that we've come to this particular evening? There's 4 real primary reasons. New Cabarrus Health Alliance has a construction bid that expires at the end of December. So any delay could result in a higher cost for the construction of that building. The city has a project that we're partnering with the Department of Transportation on, a pedestrian tunnel and stormwater line across the Loop Road at Village Park. Department of Transportation has to have their money by January to use federal stimulus money. So they have to have that money in hand before the project can proceed. And they have a schedule with the feds to get that done. In this volatile economic environment, we think we should not delay any longer. We never know what interest rates might do in the next month or the next 6 months. So we think that's important. And perhaps most importantly, there are going to be 2 new seats on this board, and with no disrespect to the new members, this will be a huge learning curve for them. Most of the board members on the current board have been working through this for 5 years, or in some cases 2 to 3 years. So there's a long history there. So we feel it's important to proceed quickly. I'll hit a few highlights. Most of this is in your packets. There's a financing plan overview that I won't go through in any more detail. You've seen it for several months now. There's also the interlocal agreement. Our bond counsel and our financial advisors are here if you have any specific technical or legal questions, but I'll hit a few highlights. The agreement is the same as it has been from the beginning. The commissioners are being asked through the interlocal agreement to commit to 1/2 of the debt service, whatever that amount is, whatever the old TIF revenues in the district, whatever revenues are available, you'll commit to those up to 1/2 of the debt service. The projections are about $1.3 million for city and county. The projections also were about $1.7 million the county is taking from in tax revenues from the TIF district. So there's a $400,000 balance essentially, if you want to view it that way. We did provide you a sensitivity analysis a few weeks ago that one of the concerns at the work session was this notion that maybe the numbers were too aggressive and not conservative enough. And if you looked at that sensitivity analysis, it assumes some significant drops in value, assumed no development on the campus, essentially a static situation, actually a decreasing amount of value, which we don't think will happen. I think the majority of the board at your work session didn't think that would happen, but we did that, and there were still enough revenues between the 2 entities to cover the debt service. So we feel pretty confident in the numbers. The total amount is ultimately, the exact number will be decided at the bond closing based on the prevailing interest rates and other factors, but the projection is between 36 and 37 million, which would result in a $31 million project fund. There's 2 years capitalized interest in this plan, which means the county would not have to pay debt service until 2013 for the first 2 years of the debt. And that was a request that the county made to be able to make this work. The Cabarrus Health Alliance building will be collateral for this transaction because it's a COPS. We need that building as collateral. We will have a side agreement, the city and the Cabarrus Health Alliance, for construction management, ultimately ownership, long-term maintenance during the maintenance and operational expenses during the life of the loan, the 17-year debt. All of that will be between the city and the Cabarrus Health Alliance. I also have provided to the board some issues, more or less the city's position related to the Cabarrus Health Alliance. I won't go through that anymore. I think you know the city's position on that. The projected revenues and the project list are both in the packets. I did send the county manager, I think he forwarded this to you this afternoon, a revised version of that. The project list. The most notable change is that we have defined the extra money that would be available through the COPS issuance. It's about $3.4 million, which we are suggesting and will include in our LGC application, would go towards what we're calling Phase 2A infrastructure, essentially the roads, streets, water and sewer on the extreme northeast part of the quadrant of the campus, north of the core lab. There is a potential economic development investment project that is considering that part of the campus, and this infrastructure would open that particular part of the campus up. So we think that's an important project to include in the plan. Also included in the interlocal agreement is, you'll note in section 3.1 of the agreement, there's a reference to schedules. The Schedule A that will be in that agreement is, with obviously some minor tweaks, potentially the project list, the primary project list, the $31 million list that I sent you this afternoon. It's also in your packets. The primary difference is that $3.4 million. And then there's a Schedule A1, which is a supplemental schedule. This has a history going back from when the project or the agreement was originally drafted for the TIF, where we had a whole host of other projects, and we still do. There's $20 million of additional projects not included in this funding we have in that list I sent you this afternoon that essentially are alternative projects, backup projects. One objective is to show the local government commission that we're not borrowing too much money, that the plan still is the $168 million plan. We have certainly all focused it to the $37 million number for this current bond issue, but the long-term plan is still the larger amount. We've included those projects that are either have already been completed, that are subject potentially to reimbursements, or projects that could go into construction pretty quickly. It's likely none of those projects will come into play in a big way, but they're on that summary for your information and for the local government commission's information. And that is about it. I will answer any quick questions you might have, and as I said, we have our entire team here that can answer any detailed questions that the board may have.
Are there any questions this time for Mr. Legg?
Mr. Chairman, I got one question. I noticed that, Mike, $16 million of this COPS will be for improvements primarily in the city of Kannapolis. Why isn't the city of Kannapolis issuing these COPS rather than calling upon the taxpayers of the county?
Well, and that's a philosophical question, Commissioner Privet. You know, that's goes back to the beginning of our negotiations on the TIF, using public dollars to support the private investment. There's been to date more than $400 million of private investment, as I mentioned in my opening remarks. It's probably one of the 3 largest economic development projects this county has ever seen. So the whole basis of this TIF was the city and county would jointly participate to finance public improvements to support the private development.
Yeah, my question would be, I cannot conceive of the county borrowing money, for instance, to give to the city of Concord or Harrisburg or Mount Pleasant or Midland $16 million for improvements in their municipalities. And as far as I can determine, the history of this county, where the county has never borrowed money for a municipality for projects. For instance, here is funds for North Main Street completion. It blows my mind to think that we'd be borrowing money to complete North Main Street of Concord or Mount Pleasant or Harrisburg or wherever. But then I noticed that over $6 million will be reimbursement to Castle and Cook. That's Mr. Murdoch's company. The state's already, I believe, furnishing about $25 million for that project. And now here the county is being asked to borrow money to reimburse $6 million. And, but anyway, that's a real question I have. Why should municipalities being borrowing, why should the county be borrowing money for municipal projects?
I'll answer that 2 ways, and one is a technical legal answer and the other is more substantive. I think the technical legal answer is the city's borrowing the money. You're participating in the debt service through an interlocal agreement, but that's the legal technical answer. The more practical answer is we're in this together. We're also, the city's committing to borrowing up to $15 million for the Cabarrus Health Alliance, which is not a city function, and we would normally not do that. But through this partnership, we're paying, and I have never wanted to look at this as we're paying for our part and you're paying for your part. We've always wanted to look at this jointly. But we would never agree on in a normal circumstance to pay for that kind of county function either. So I think that can go both ways, Mr. Privet.
Well, that leads me to another question. Why would the city be asking the county to borrow money to build a county facility?
We haven't. We're responding to the original request by the county to include the Cabarrus Health Alliance in this original tax increment financing issue. So we have since come to support the Health Alliance, and our city council has for a whole host of reasons as being part of this, but this was never a project we put on the list. It was a project the county put on the list.
And of course, that leads to another question. It's interesting. A lot of information I get from rank and file folks is in the locker room at the YMCA in Kannapolis. That's where I get more questions than anywhere else. And I've had only one individual to express support for a county health department being on the Rowan County line practically. And several Kannapolis folks cannot understand why we're putting a health facility almost on the Rowan County line where folks in Harrisburg, Midland, Mount Pleasant have got to drive almost to Rowan County for health department services. And they just question the advisability and the policy of such. So,
would you like me to respond?
Yes.
Well, first of all, several years ago, the county made the decision to put the Health Alliance in the northern part of Kannapolis, and that's where it is now. So that decision was made a long time ago. But beyond that, according to Dr. Pilkington, the majority, 75% or more of their client base is within a 5-mile radius either side of I-85. The bulk of the clients are not in Mount Pleasant or Harrisburg or Midland. The bulk of the clients are in the central parts of Kannapolis and Concord. So in reality, as long as it's on the bus line, which all the sites that we've been talking about are, it really doesn't matter a whole lot how far away it is. Certainly one right at I-85 near the hospital on either side would be a good location, but that land's never been part of the equation.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Legg?
I guess just a couple of things, Mr. Chairman. The timeline, December 7th is the local government commission. What, do you need final approval on interlocal agreement tonight or a resolution tonight, or what is needed before you can proceed to the local government commission? And when does the city council, I guess, vote on the interlocal agreement?
Assuming there's action taken tonight, we will let the county vote on this first, but assuming there's action taken tonight, city council will vote on this next Monday night, a week from tonight. And if we do all of that, we already have our LGC application on file. It can certainly be pulled, but we had to start the process. So assuming both boards agree between now and next Monday night, then we'll still be fine making that December 7th local government commission agenda. They have made it clear they want the county's decision before they'll consider it, which makes sense.
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Commissioner
question
Myatt.
for Mr. Legg. We didn't receive this interlocal agreement in time to really study it. And I just need to know from you or whoever can tell me, what are the specific changes, if any, in responsibilities? There's been no changes whatsoever, is my understanding, to the agreement that we made that if the revenues from Kannapolis do not come up to the amount that's owed, that we are limited to a certain amount.
You're only limited to the revenues from the increase in the tax revenues from the campus from 2006-07 to this point, which is the 1.3 estimate.
So the county is protected as it was before when we worked this out for the TIF bonds.
Unless the
That has
county's
not
made changes, the agreement
What
we
are-
drafted
What are
includes it.
any changes in this one?
We've not made any changes. That the agreement is essentially the same agreement that has been floated for a couple of years. We've not made any changes, substantive changes, just updating it with dates and things. Now, I understand the county is still looking at it. There could be changes, but we haven't seen those. So the ones that were in your packet at the work session and the ones that you have now, the agreement, the version of is the same in both of those, so nothing has changed, in the past month for sure, and really nothing's changed prior to that. So it's the same
And if
agreement.
my recollection, at my age, it's getting harder to remember 5 years ago, but when we first mentioned putting the health department there, that was the county's contribution or request.
That's right.
That was not a request of the city of Kannapolis.
That's right.
We wanted that included in the TIF bond situation.
Correct.
Also, there have been, I understand, several companies or schools or what have you who are interested in using a public health facility in conjunction with some of the research that takes place in the campus. The proximity would be very helpful.
That is my understanding from both Castle and Cook, from folks on the campus, and from Dr. Pilkington. that I think the sky's the limit of the collaboration. The population that use the Health Alliance's services is a population that we need more information about. And the proximity of where they are to what Duke University is doing, what the other universities are doing, is pretty critical.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Legg, a couple of questions.
Sure.
And I have not looked all the way through the interlocal agreement. I've looked through quite a bit of it. I don't remember, I know you referenced it, but I want to make certain that I think it's important for this board to if we agree to an interlocal agreement, that it makes certain it does say that we pay no more than half the debt service, number one. Number two, and this is not something I think this board needs to take up, but when those payments are made, and what I mean by that is we receive or we have the funds from property tax from the district. Those monies are available in the first part of the year. The vehicle property tax from the district is not available until later in the year, so that however the payments are structured, I think that needs to be reflected in the agreement, which I know that at one point in time it was, but I just think if we were to do that, we just need to make certain that those dates, and I think it's May and August or March and August is the dates, and I don't know about the vehicle tax date, but that you'll have to get in touch with Mr. Cordell, because I think he has those dates.
Right. It was set up for semi-annual, and it was set up so you only transferred money in time to make debt service payments. So, and we tried to accommodate the fact that a portion of this was coming from personal property, vehicles and the like, as opposed to real estate.
Okay.
But you should be ahead of the curve. In other words, your real property collections are going to far exceed the first payment, so you'll be ahead of the curve on that.
Well, I just think that that's an issue that I think Mr. Cordell can talk about.
Yes, sir.
The other, I'm not certain, I don't remember seeing it, but I think it should reference, the discussion that we had was if the district gets to be, or not if, when the district gets to be a value that the debt service, let me get this right now. When the district becomes is generating enough money that the county's obligation or requirement is no longer needed, then we can step out or it can be reviewed, but we can step out because it's generating enough to pay off the debt service. I thought that was in the old agreement. I'm not certain if it was in the new agreement.
I believe there's a look back or a regrouping period.
There is a period for regrouping, but it
Okay.
wasn't exactly it disappeared automatically.
No, we need to I think that needs to be in the agreement. If, again, if it passes, then we need to make certain that once the district is paying for itself, then it allows us to, is there any reason for us to continue to participate when it's paying for itself? And I think that just needs to be discussed, or it needs to be looked at, because I thought that was in the old agreement, and I'm not certain where I saw it in the new agreement. I may have overlooked it. If I was just thinking, since it is in the old agreement, there would not be an issue in regards to putting it in the new agreement.
Does not. And I sent to Steve and whoever else received black line against the last agreed upon version. So it'll show.
Yeah.
It'll show exactly what the changes were.
Let's see. Are there any other questions for, yes, Commissioner Poole?
Okay, I'm confused with your answer to one of his questions, because he said, do we need to approve the resolution of support tonight or the interlocal? So what are we actually being asked to approve tonight?
Adopting the interlocal agreement. Now, as far as the protocol of how you do things like that, certainly our city council often will give me some latitude when they authorize me to enter into an agreement like that to make minor changes and that sort of thing. And I think that's some of the things we're talking about. But my preference is that the board consider the interlocal agreement with some certainly can have some sort of condition. But to keep on the timeline, by next Monday, we need to show, by next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, we need to have documents in hand or some evidence to the Local Government Commission that both boards are on board with the interlocal agreement. So it doesn't have to be tonight, but it needs to be, by our next meeting a week from tonight.
And the reason I'm asking is that, having not had the chance to read through either the draft resolution or the draft interlocal agreement that are supplemental in information, a concern would be to approve an agreement that we haven't had enough time to really look at, because I know that the bond councils were working on it and trying to get it back and everything else. So, I was a little confused because we have two items as our attachment. So that's why, I don't know if that's a question for our attorney on which one we were expected to approve, because the first one that's called draft resolution says that we're, meeting tonight and who's here, and a resolution approving the agreement. But then my understanding is the interlocal agreement is still in a draft form, and I don't know that you've seen the draft form that we now have on the laptop, so it would appear to me that once, even if we approve it tonight, that you're going to look at it, and I would be surprised, in all honesty, if every word was perfect when you looked at it. So that there would be a change. We're not meeting again between now and next Monday when you meet, so that's what I was trying to figure out exactly what you were asking for tonight. In your timeline, you have the City of Kannapolis was to conduct a public hearing. Have you had your public hearing?
We have.
And did you have any responses?
There were no speakers.
And we always have an overwhelming outflow of responses when we have public hearings, so.
Yeah, that's, same with us, no response.
Same with you, okay. Let's see, on our page 183, this may be a question for our attorney. At the bottom of our page 183, section 2, it says the agreement is hereby approved in substantially the form submitted to this meeting, and each of the chairman of the Board of Commissioners and the county manager is hereby authorized to execute and deliver the agreement in the name and on behalf of the county, and then the next phrase, with such changes, insertions, or omissions as the persons executing the agreement may approve. Does that mean that the chairman or the county manager can approve any changes, or will that come back to the Board of Commissioners?
I think the way that's drafted, it gives whoever you authorize to finalize the document some wiggle room with reference to language and with reference to certain legalistic type provisions. I don't think it gives them the authority to change in substance what this board would approve to be in the agreement. And so if your intention is to approve the agreement tonight, I think that it would be well to spell out a couple of things. One, the essence of what you believe should be in this interlocal agreement. I think the chairman, may have started with a few items that in some of his remarks, and then also to identify those persons that you would authorize to finalize it, certainly to include Steve Cordell, the county's bond counsel, among those.
Okay.
I might also add, then you would need to reference also which substantially completed version of the interlocal agreement you're referring to in the resolution. There's the one that was offered by the City of Kannapolis, and then there's the one that we just got from our bond counsel that's included in your supplemental information.
Okay. So then, on the one that we have as our draft interlocal agreement has, Mr. Cook, have you had the opportunity to review it, or county manager or finance director, to make sure that what's in it? I haven't been involved with this until really just recently, because this has all been kind of on hold and now we're kind of rushing through fairly quickly. And so you would have some history that I wouldn't have, and Commissioner Caruth would have history that I wouldn't have. So I want to see if you have had the opportunity to review the draft.
I have reviewed a couple of iterations of this document. I cannot tell you, because I haven't had an opportunity to look at the one that was attached as the supplement to determine what differences there are in that document compared to the previous ones I've seen, because we're not looking at a black line copy, so it's not, it's substantially the same, I can say that. There were a couple of changes I suggested to Mr. Cordell this morning that didn't relate to the financial part of the document. They more related to certain matters, such as, since there's been added a provision that the Health Alliance building would be conveyed either to the Health Alliance or the county, I recommended to him that this document be put in recordable form, so it can be recorded at the Register of Deeds, so that would be sure to be put on the public record. And then there were some other issues that he and I discussed relating to how a possible 2012 revaluation might affect it. But beyond that, I can't. I've pretty much deferred to Mr. Cordell and his expertise on the specific parts of the agreement. I think he's been in negotiating that with Mr. Jeffcoat, as I understand, between the two of them primarily. Is that true?
Mr. Jeffcoat, do you?
I've passed documents to Steve,
Yeah.
yes.
And have they been passed back to you?
I have not seen
Okay.
the things that Steve has done, but could I take a point just for a second with you?
Yes, sir.
One of the things that, and my general role is as counsel to governments and like Mr. Cook and Steve, but one of the things we do is if you stop and think about a building plan or something like that, what we're doing is we've got a building plan for our financing and what we're doing. At some point, I have the set of plans that have been turned over from the architect to the contractor. The contractor has to be able to make adjustments because as he's building the building, things happen. He sees things. He sees things that weren't seen by the architect. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about, that I'm giving the contractor the ability to make the adjustments to the basic plan that have to be made to make it work when it's actually being done. So when you're giving the authority to the county attorney, to the bond counsel, and to the county manager and the chairman of the commission to approve minor changes, that's the kind of changes we're talking about. The fundamental policy things, which I think for you were, we have a project that is our project that we want to see done. We don't want to pay more than 50% of debt service, and we don't want to be obligated for anything other than the revenues out of the project area. Those basic fundamental principles are what they can't change, but they can change the stuff that's necessary to get the light switch where it's supposed to be, or the socket, the electrical socket where it's supposed to be. That's what they're supposed to be able to do. So, does that help?
That helps.
Thank you.
I just have a couple more.
No, that's fine. I wanted to just comment about, it seems like some of the changes is just the recital portion that was different than Mr. Jeffcoat and what we have from Mr. Cordell, referencing the project, referencing who's doing what in regards to the public improvement. It looks like that was the main changes, is the recital.
And a further case
The
in
first
point,
part of the agreement, sorry.
we had an interchange with the Local Government Commission today, and part of my email back to them was, well, based on what you're saying, we may have to adjust the premises, the whereas clauses, that's the findings at the front part of the document to accommodate what you're doing. But that's the sort of thing that we're talking about. So that's to be expected.
Okay. Have you talked to the, I don't know how you can answer this. Have you talked to the LGC? I know you have in your schedule where you're going to go to them, but I mean, does it appear that everything's going to happen by the end of the year and there's no issues? There was an article that I only briefly saw, or a news report briefly today, about some concerns about the bond market at this point in time. So I don't know how much you've checked to make sure that how good you're feeling about December 31st or sooner.
Feel as good as we have in 5 years, that's for sure.
Well, that was a couched remark. How's that?
Just the volatile
Big disclaimer
market.
on that one.
Yeah, no, don't read that into more than it is. We met with the local government commission staff. We've had several conversations with them and had a face-to-face meeting with them a week ago, and they are completely comfortable with the plan. Their only outstanding real issue is the two boards reaching this agreement, quite frankly. So I believe we have some pretty talented financial advisors. They would be the first to advise me if we were in a trouble area, and they have not.
Okay, and a clarification, you talked about that I know in this that we got today, have additional projects that are needed and that could be done, I guess, in the future.
Right.
Would that be in a separate COPS issuance that doesn't have anything to do with this one? Would you come back to us for half of that? Would we need a new interlocal agreement? What does that mean?
Yeah, the supplemental projects, the way the current agreement is drafted, and this could be adjusted too if we don't think it's worth having, but they will be in there as supplemental projects that if something were to happen to a project on the list, that will be the list that we both agreed we'd choose from to sort of replace a project. That's kind of how that's set up. But more importantly, it's to show the local government commission, I mentioned in the earlier remarks, that we're not borrowing too much money, that we have more projects than we have money. The last thing the local government commission wants any local government to do is borrow more money than they need. That's why they want to have as many bids in hand and projects. You know, they really like this because there's reimbursements involved, so projects are done, they're completed, some of them. They like that. So that's why these supplemental projects are on there. They're really not terribly important other than that. If we were to build some of these or finance some of these, the practical answer, Commissioner Poole, is yes, that would be a completely separate agreement, has nothing to do with this agreement.
Okay. And then this one, you probably may not be able to answer, and I'm not certain that anybody can, but of course, we have discussed, as I think Commissioner Minot mentioned earlier, the possibility of placing this on our property, and I know we have also attached an email enumerating an estimation of what those costs would be to put it on our property versus the property in Kannapolis. As you go through this, at what point in time does that decision need to be made?
My feeling is that if that condition is placed on as a condition of adopting the interlocal agreement, that it be placed on the county's property, the fairgrounds, the city council will probably not enter into the agreement. I think that's too radical of a change. That will probably be a non-starter for the agreement. That's just the way it has to be, I think.
And the email we're talking about that was the estimated cost of locating it at the fairgrounds. It'd be $1.3 million roughly, 1.27.
Correct. In exchange for the $2.5 million for land acquisition.
Right.
That would be the difference.
Yes.
1.3
versus the
1.27. It's
Yep.
about half versus the cost of purchasing. And this, I don't believe that we have had the opportunity, and I don't know exactly when we would have the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to discuss in more detail the land, because I think that's an important issue that at some point in time we might need to look at. So, just a generalized statement. I mean, I don't have any concerns about partnering with the city of Kannapolis. I think that's what we've been talking about. And this commission prior to me has been talking about it for a long time. My only concern would be to make sure that the interlocal agreement, if that's what we're approving tonight, that it is subject to council review and, making sure that all the parts of it are where it need to be, and that a decision is made pretty quickly as far as the land issue that we have brought up. So, but other than that, I mean, I don't have a problem with the idea. I think the concept of going in together makes sense, and that's not an issue for me. My only concern today is just getting this, and I know that you're fast-tracking, so I understand that it takes a while for attorneys to get anything done. I mean that in the nicest of ways to the two that are sitting up here. But, you know, you do have to make sure everything's done correctly. The cover sheet has finance director's spot for her signature on there, so she needs to be comfortable. That's the only way that I make a financial decision, is if she tells me that she's good with it. So those would be my only reservations at this point in time. It's just making sure that everything's done correctly and the way that we need it done. So thank you.
The way I look at, our discussion tonight can kind of like, you can sit down if you like to, Mr. Leggett. If we have any questions, we'll call you back up. My teacher and principal did that quite often. I look at it as if there is a favorable decision tonight in doing the interlocal agreement, there's a couple of things that we need to look at. Is one, do we wish to fund the construction of a new building for the Health Alliance? Would be number one. If that would be yes, then where's the location? I think that would be two. Three is the amount that we'd want us to spend on the Health Alliance building, and I'll come back to these to talk about them individually. The cost to fund the Health Alliance building, to what amount, and if it is anything less than the $15 million, what is the amount that we would partner with Kannapolis? Well, excuse me. I think the fourth would be, do we fund it ourselves or do we partner with Kannapolis? If we partner with Kannapolis, to what degree do we partner with Kannapolis? And let's see here. And then, as it relates to the interlocal agreement, that is in principle already, I think in principle we have some of the issues, or we have some of it fleshed out, but pay no more than half the debt. That the language, and I will try and find it in whatever documents that we have, but I thought there was language in theory that once the district is paying for itself, that the county and the city can look back at it and decide, does the county need to participate anymore once the district is paying for itself in regards to the debt. And then in regards to, so I think those are the issues. Now, if I can go back, I do think that we need to look at building a new building for the Health Alliance building. I think it's going to be a tremendous asset for the county in regards to what can be done for those who are less fortunate than many of us, that it'll be untold benefits down the road. I did have some, in regards to the amount of money, I do have concerns about the artwork, about financing items that have a life expectancy greater than the loan. And in this case, if memory serves me correctly, the loan's going to be about 17 years. So that in regards to computers, that's just the one thing. And also the land cost is that if it is that it looks like it's going to potentially cost $1.3 million if it goes to the old fairgrounds. So I think that needs to be addressed. I think that if we were to participate, that funding for the Health Alliance building, taking those numbers out or looking at those numbers, should not exceed $13.5 million. That would, my rough numbers, and my rough numbers is taking out the $90,000, taking out computers or that equipment that is not going to last longer, and well as plugging in, instead of 2.5, $1.3 million, I think I have it here, in regards to the land costs, so that I'm looking at $13.4, $13.5 million. Where the balance comes from, I look at it as an issue for the Health Alliance, and hopefully Kannapolis can work it out, as well as whomever, the land is being purchased from Castle and Cook, so hopefully they will realize the benefit, which I think they do, and can see to it to make that work in regards to the land price. I don't know, but I think that we should look at that. In regards to there was another concern of mine that in regards to dental equipment, that is not something that the county normally or at all funds for the Health Alliance. However, that is a revenue stream for the Health Alliance that actually makes money. And if it is making money, then that means less money that the county's having to provide, so that I look at it as a benefit, so I can understand that we'll get a better payback than otherwise. And one thing for everybody to understand is the dental work that the Health Alliance is doing is not directly in competition with the market. It is helping children. And I'm not saying there's not dentists out there that don't help. Don't get me wrong. I know there's a lot of dentists that help, but we're not in direct competition, or the Health Alliance is not in direct competition with the private sector, which I think is very important. Government should not be in direct competition with the private sector. So that I look at that as a little bit different issue. In regards to the interlocal agreement, those items are in there. Excuse me, the amount of money, I do have some reservations in regards to the cost of issuance. And I know that at our meeting there was some discussion about that can be resolved, so that if I were to, the way I see where we stand tonight is we have a $36.5 million issue as what Kannapolis will be issuing, not Cabarrus County. If you were to take the Health Alliance down to $13.5 million, then I think that would change it to about $32 million. I don't have my math correct, I know, but I would ask Mr. Legg, or because I see him writing down a lot of things. So that was, if we plug in that number, I think that $13.5 million is a little bit better, and it may go down a little bit further depending on what can be worked out in regards to the cost of issuance. And I believe that has answered many of the questions that this board has had in the work session. I tried to compile it. Does anybody have any other comments or thoughts? Commissioner Privet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number one, on the Health Alliance, with the indebtedness the county already has, and it's been suggested that the citizens of this county may be facing a tax increase next year, and that raises questions to me why we don't need to be, in the current economic situation, we should not be adding more debt to this county that's going to result in a higher property tax for the citizens of this county. And I can see no reason why the Health Alliance cannot continue, and it's where it's operating right now. I see no need of adding a greater debt burden on the county and the taxpayers of this county, especially in light of the economic situations, the unemployment situation that we're facing. That's why I got some real reservations about even the construction of a new Health Alliance. And then I got real reservations about why the county should accept responsibility for municipal projects. This is new ground, and if we do it for Kannapolis, we're open the door to do it for every municipality in this county, and I just think that's bad public policy.
Commissioner Privet, I certainly appreciate you for jogging my memory, because one of the things that I put down here that I forgot to mention is that if there is a passage of any interlocal agreement, then it's contingent upon the agreement not affecting our bond rating or our debt capacity, which, if we're not borrowing the money, in theory, that should not affect our debt capacity, and it should not affect our bond rating. I don't think Kannapolis is not asking for it to affect either one of those. So I'm glad I had written it down and I forgot to mention it, so that this is not something that the county's borrowing. It's not something that the county's getting indebted on. And I think it's very important that any agreement that we pass or we approve, if it's done, that it's done so it does not affect our bond rating or our debt to capacity.
Who's going to pay for the debt?
Kannapolis. And Cabarrus will be paying for it through the increased revenues from that area. So it's not a debt of the county, it's a debt of the Kannapolis.
So the tax revenues from Kannapolis will pay for this debt?
The tax revenue, not all of Kannapolis, a small portion of Kannapolis, which is in that district. Yes, sir.
Who's going to pay for the services that normally that those taxes pay for?
Can you say that again now?
All right, currently, right, for instance, a good example is the new addition at A.L. Brown High School.
Yes, sir.
And so if the revenue coming from Kannapolis is going to pay for this $30 million or $16 million, that means that who's going to pay for the debt on the new A.L. Brown High School? That's going to be all of the county.
Yes, sir.
Minus the revenues that would be coming from Kannapolis.
No, there is.
Part of Kannapolis.
No, sir. There is revenues from that district that is over and above what the debt service is, and those would be put into in theory, into the general fund as well. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple. I guess I hear from you saying that the big, to reduce the Health Alliance from 15 to 13.5 million, and concerns about the cost of issuance, so to bring down the not to exceed amount from somewhere around 36.5 to somewhere around 32. But I guess in hearing that, I'm assuming that means that the Health Alliance would go into Kannapolis, that we're not looking at then relocating it to the county property.
And what I was saying, I think in staying in Kannapolis, it could be moved to another location, but if we goes to another location, then you're changing the numbers. I think if it stays in Kannapolis, that's where what I was saying is reducing the cost of the land and however the difference is made up, if there's any difference. But that would be included in keeping it in Kannapolis, but putting it at $13.5 million. And the way I came up with that is if it's going to cost, in theory, approximately $1.3 million for building it at the old fairgrounds, then if that's going to be the cost, then that should be what the county participates in solely if it stays in Kannapolis.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've already heard tonight that if we vote to move it to Concord, it's probably going to be a non-starter for the Kannapolis City Council.
That's what Mr. Legg says he believes. He doesn't know what the council will do.
Because I've got some concerns about the overall thing of relocating it. And I think the easiest way to say it, rather than go through the whole thing I thought through, is that it's kind of like what I saw yesterday, put it very simply, the analogy of in an NFL game, if a coach disagrees with a decision the referee's made, they can toss the red flag and ask for a challenge. Before they can change that, the refs have got to see conclusive evidence that there's going to be, that's going to cause the play to change before they would actually make the change. And my concern is that we've got so much that are, I guess, with relocating it, there's a lot of unknowns still that we may not be able to get answered before the city of Kannapolis has to go to the local government commission, that would put the whole thing in jeopardy if, you know, it was held up. We'd have to hold everything up to answer those questions and still not know whether or not we're going to, would proceed with it. So that's why I think it's a better idea if that's, needs that to move it forward, to go ahead and keep it at the Kannapolis site, then I would be in support of that, because it would take that off the table, so to speak. That way, because there's, like I say, I think there's just a lot of unknowns about, even though it's a noble idea to think about putting it at the fairgrounds, I think at this late juncture, with the time frame we're up against, I think it's just going to have an unintended consequence of stopping everything in its tracks. And, you know, so.
Commissioner Minot.
I would like to agree with Commissioner Caruth that we were on target, we were on track to go with TIF bonds. We agreed to that many years ago. We wanted the Health Alliance there at that time. Plans have gone ahead to put it there. I think we've done due diligence to try to figure out what the cost would be to the county if we changed our minds and put it at the fairgrounds, but that is sort of a Johnny-come-lately concept. We hadn't even thought about it until a short time ago. This is a critical project. We need, and this, if anything this county needs, it is evidence that we're moving forward and coming out of our economic doldrums. I think that it would be a tremendous mistake at this point to do anything that would throw a monkey wrench into the city of Kannapolis and those plans for the research campus and how it's going to be funded. I also would like to make the statement, and perhaps I'm in error here, but when we talk about reimbursements, that means that someone has already paid for things that the county would have been responsible for in the first place. And all we're doing is paying them back for those things. So someone, Castle and Cook in particular, has been carrying $6 million, in excess of $6 million of cost for the county for quite some time, and those projects have already been completed. Those projects would have been ones that we would have been responsible for in any way. So we're not giving Castle and Cook anything. We're returning to them funds that they literally lent to us for a period of time. I think that needs to be understood by the public as well. There has been no outcry that I have heard, no calls, no emails, no major uprising about maintaining the Health Alliance in the city of Kannapolis. We're moving it a few blocks from where it is today, and I think we need to just go ahead and make this decision and stop this uncertainty. If you wait until, quite frankly, if you wait until the change of this board, you may get into another quagmire because you will have two commissioners who don't have the history, as you mentioned earlier, and that might deep six this entire situation. So I think we need to move forward with this. I think it's high time this decision was made.
It sounds like there is some consensus on the board, and I do want to make certain that we have an understanding or a meeting of the minds, and as lawyers like to talk, is we do have a resolution in here that was drafted by Mr. Cordell that is very similar to what Mr. Jeffcoat has. I would call everybody's attention, this board's attention, to page 184 that says, at the bottom of 183, top part of 184, it says the maximum principal amount of the city debt to be supported by the agreement may not exceed $36.5 million. And I just did some quick math. If if this board is comfortable with an amount not to exceed $13.5 million for the Health Alliance, then we're taking off roughly $1.5 million, so that takes it down to $35 million, and it could be a little bit less, talking about negotiating, so that the amount may not exceed $35 million is the way I see it, is the way I hear it, excuse me. But we would need a motion to adopt the resolution as presented with an amount not to exceed $35 million. And the breakdown of those numbers would be fine-tuned as we discussed tonight, which would be the $13.5 million for the Health Alliance and a discussion in regards to the cost of issuance, which is right now at about $750,000. So we'd do a resolution. Now, if this board passes that resolution, then I believe the motion then would be to approve the interlocal agreement with Kannapolis, as, again, we discussed tonight, and contingent on the agreement not affecting the county's bond rating or debt capacity.
Mr. Chair, if I point out and see something here in paragraph 2, right where that item is at there on top of page 184, is that it has that statement in there under item number 2. Before executing and delivering the agreement, the county manager and finance director shall obtain confirmation satisfactory to either of them from each of the rating agencies that the execution and delivery of the agreement will not have any negative impact on the county's respective long-term ratings with such rating agencies.
Okay.
And I think that's what
we are all wordsmiths, and I would like to make certain it's clear that it does not affect our debt capacity, nor does it affect our bond rating.
And then I think it looks like with us passing the resolution, section 4, that we, in passing the resolution, are also adopting, in essence, the interlocal agreement.
And when you say the interlocal agreement, my concern is that it needs to make certain that both sides agree to what that interlocal agreement is. And I think we're very clear into what our concerns are or what we would like to have in that interlocal agreement, so that would be the spirit of what the interlocal agreement will look like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she said, I think our attorney said, we need to make sure that it's this one that's before us so that he knows, and you, county manager, whoever we designate to finalize it along with the city of Kannapolis, because they've already said they haven't seen it. Mr. Cordell, all those folks need to know exactly which one the resolution is approving. This changes it from the TIF to the COPS, and I know there's some different wording if it's a COPS versus a TIF. There are things that you can't have in it, language, but then you also want to tie some things back. So we do need to be specific that that's the interlocal agreement that we're looking at.
And Mr. Chairman, I did find that reference. It's on page 183 behind the second whereas there has been submitted to this meeting a draft form of an interlocal agreement. That draft form is the one that's in front of you.
And, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call attention to Section 3 of the resolution that gives authority to you as the chairman, the county manager, the finance director, and the county attorney to take any and all further action, including approval of modifications to the agreement. So I think we've covered those issues that might come up.
Did the county attorney, Rich, didn't you say that we needed to add Mr. Cogdill in there or did you not say that?
I recommended that.
Cordell, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Cordell.
Steve Cordell.
Sorry, it was close. Pardon me, Mr. Cordell.
Right. So that
Would you say that we would need to add that and add his name in Section 3?
So Section 3 would be the chairman of the Board of Commissioners, the county manager, the finance director, the county attorney, and bond counsel for the county. Is there any other discussion? Do we have a motion to approve the resolution as?
Can you restate what you had proposed as a motion, just to make sure?
We do a motion to approve the resolution and interlocal agreement with Kannapolis as outlined tonight, and contingent that the agreement does not affect the county's bond rating or debt capacity
So moved. At the amount
at the amount not to exceed $35 million.
So moved.
We have a motion.
I
We have a
second
second.
I second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Next matter that we have is G4. And I would like to I'd like to apologize to the young ladies' families that are anxiously awaiting their arrival home, but I will call on Mrs. Heather Jones right now, Mrs. Debbie Bost, and the two young ladies from the 4-H. If y'all will come up, please. Both, not just one.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and County Administration, let me first say it's an exciting time to work in Cabarrus County and work with such innovative and creative people as to allow us to work on wonderful new options whereby we get to help educate our youth about county government. Just as we witnessed tonight, there are very complex things happening, and if we don't help our youth understand, they are our leaders tomorrow that will be voting on these types of issues, and we have to continue to help them understand the importance of the role government plays, not just county, but city government as well, in the process of their lives. And so this is a really important opportunity, and we appreciate very much your allowing us the opportunity to present this to you tonight.
It is timely, I think, that we're doing this and that you all are placing such emphasis, and our county government and city of Kannapolis government is placing such emphasis on the education of our young people in local government. I've had the opportunity to be in Kannapolis schools and Cabarrus County schools and talking about these type things, and so it's been interesting timing to do that. And I know too that the association is placing great emphasis on the education of our young people in local government. So what we're proposing with the youth council is that the youth council would be comprised of 18 students from all over the county, all high schools, and then they would meet to identify and discuss issues that are facing them and then strategize what to do about those. So not just talk about them, but how to get something done about them. At the same time, educating themselves and their peers on local government as they interact with you. So Taylor is here with me and with us, and she's the president of Cabarrus County 4-H County Council this year, student at Hickory Ridge, and part of the how we got this started. So she's definitely here in support of this, but she doesn't really want to say anything. So you have the information about the youth council in front of you. It's the same thing that you had a couple weeks ago, and we're really excited about getting this started and in 2011 having it strong.
Any questions for Mrs. Bost or Mrs. Jones or Taylor?
How do you plan to let other young people know that there is an application and how they get hold of it? How are you going to go about recruiting these folks?
5 of the 9 high schools, it'll be very easy because they're participating in our Cabarrus 4-H Citizenship Focus program, which is going on right now. And so I have really strong relationships with those civics teachers. The other 3 high schools, well, and then a couple of the private schools, we are at a time in 4-H, and I think Debbie will attest to this, that we have a stronger relationship with the public schools than we've probably had yeah, definitely since I've been here. So those guidance counselors, those principals, those APIs are definitely getting to know 4-H. And then the application itself will be on our website and the county's website, and it'll be accessible online, which is how young people get everything. So I think that we'll definitely be able to get the word out, and with help from the schools.
In addition, we have a strong relationship through the Agribusiness and Environmental Sciences School Days program at the fair with the Homeschool Association. So getting the information in front of those students will be easy as well. So there is a provision in the draft document that it's not just the public school kids. We have opportunities for some at-large youth so that we're encouraging everyone to participate, and we'll make those opportunities available to them.
Well, I think it's a great idea that you're doing. I know of I've written some recommendations for some students who applied to the City of Concord's Youth Council, and I've gotten feedback from them about the benefits of participating, and it looks good on a college application also, which is always good. Not being a civics teacher, but being a business teacher, these are all issues that we cover too, so I would recommend that not just with the civics teachers, but you may want to reach out to the career technical education teachers, specifically the business area, because there's a lot of overlap of the courses. And I think it's a great idea, and I'm glad that you're going forward with it. And you're going to have to, it's tough, I understand. I was in my 20s before I decided that I needed to speak out, and still had trouble for a long time. But I will anticipate you speaking to the commissioners and being ready for that and giving a report.
That's if she's president.
Yeah, well, you can still, whether you're president or not, here's an invitation for you to make sure you come back so that you can hone those skills a little bit. Oh, I'm glad that you're here tonight.
One thing that 4-H is very active in the rural part, well, not rural part, throughout the county. But the misnomer is it's just for kids that grow up on farms. Although this is through the 4-H, this is for all kids wherever they live in the county. And it's to help them in leadership as well as interact with the county in county commission on different levels, on different things that face them. Is that correct?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think it's a very good program. I already know of several very close to me that are interested. So they would talk to me all about it, and I said, it's not me. It's, you need to just do it on your own merits. Any other questions?
Just a couple comments, Mr. Chair. I think it's exciting, as I'm speaking, wearing two hats here, both the commissioner as well as a staff member for the NCACC, that I can tell you that the past two presidents, Mary Acker from Cleveland County and Joe Bryan, current president from Wake County, have both made it one of their objectives in the Objectives Association to work in working with their youth. And I think we are one of the first youth council, county youth councils in the state. So, and I believe December 3rd, there's going to be some visitors here from the state association who will be coming to participate and speak with our youth council. So yes. I'm excited about that. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Privet.
Because of the potentiality of this organization, I make a motion that we create a youth council.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all. Next we have is H1. We have a request to remove Mrs. Carol Hovey from the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee. Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. And if I am correct, that concludes all of the business that's before us on the agenda. Is that correct, Mrs. Honeycutt? Okay. Do we have any other further business to come before this board?
Just make a couple comments, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Kruth?
Yeah, just nothing. I know that we will be, on December the 6th, we'll be transitioning to the board. And I just wanted to say tonight that that will probably not be televised in those things, but I just wanted to thank, a lot of people have, over the last 10 years, have been talking about sometimes the discussions that Mr. Privet and I get into, but I wanted to thank Mr. Privet for his service in his community and over the years he served his community. And been sometimes we've had our moments, Commissioner Privet, but I appreciate you being there and and be willing to serve as commissioner these years, and as well as before that in the State House, and putting your name in the hat for a couple of other offices while you were in public service. And I wanted to thank you tonight while we're on camera. Thank you for, and it's been a pleasure. So.
Thank you, sir. I learned a long time ago, Bob, that we can disagree without being disagreeable. And even though I disagree a lot of times with decisions even made by this board, I will not allow that disagreement to make me disagreeable.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, also I wanted to, not to miss mine, to my right here, and she's one of the first people I heard about when I first arrived in Cabarrus County 15 years ago, and been involved in the community, and thank her as well. She's been on the board for only 4 years. I've worked with her on this board. It's been tremendous. But I know working with her on the school board before that was a great pleasure and honor, and looking forward to both of you, I think, to continued participation in our community's activities. So.
Thank you for the comments. I already turned in tonight to Kay and a committee request, so I hope that I can still be of service to the county. I have enjoyed 18 years of service to the county, and it has enriched my life in all the people I've come to know that I would not have known otherwise, and all of the knowledge about the community that I would not have known otherwise. We have a fantastic county and a fantastic community. I couldn't be prouder of it, and I'm just grateful to all the people who have made it that way. Everybody in this room and out there on all the boards and staffs of the different governmental agencies. It's a marvelous, marvelous community, and I've been a pleasure to serve.
One thing that it's interesting, I ran 4 years ago with the idea that, like Commissioner Privet was saying, you can disagree but not be disagreeable. And for the first 2 years I was here with Commissioner Juba, and then the 4 years with Commissioner Minot and Commissioner Privet, is that we've had our opportunities to butt heads, to want to strangle each other, but it was to get to the point because we all had the best for Cabarrus County at heart. And when we dug deep, we found the commonality, and we were able to agree and understand where each of us was coming from. We always didn't agree on the vote, but as Commissioner Privet said, is that we had some great conversations. And I've learned a lot from y'all, and I will miss y'all's thoughts. I will miss y'all's hankerings and guidance. And, I know that I'll be calling y'all to say, hey, what about this? I was thinking about this. What are your thoughts? Because that's important. It's very important to me. But thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for serving. And we will have the December the 6th televised. I believe it's going to be the swearing in will be televised, and also wishing Commissioner Privet and Commissioner Minot good luck and Godspeed. So if there's no other comments before the board, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.